I know what you are hiding, Mary whispered under her breath, her eyes narrowing slightly as she held the envelope that had arrived earlier that morning, the faint scent of chamomile tea lingering in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed softly through the half-open blinds, illuminating the polished hardwood floors and casting long, delicate shadows across the countertops. She set the envelope down with deliberate care, letting the weight of its contents settle into her awareness, her mind racing through memories of subtle inconsistencies, quiet whispers, and overlooked hints that had, until now, seemed inconsequential. The house remained still except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the wooden floor beneath her feet, but inside Mary's thoughts were anything but calm. She poured herself a cup of tea, inhaling the warm, soothing aroma, letting it anchor her as she reflected on the morning's revelation and contemplated how best to navigate the delicate balance of family dynamics while maintaining her dignity and poise. Across town, Karen sat at her sleek office desk, reviewing financial reports and scheduling appointments with an effortless air of confidence, unaware that Mary had already begun piecing together a quiet strategy to ensure the household's integrity and her rightful place within it. Back in the kitchen, Mary moved with careful precision, straightening cushions in the living room and adjusting framed photographs, each movement a testament to her deliberate control and attention to detail, a subtle assertion of authority that required no words. The morning passed with deliberate pacing, Mary taking note of small changes in light and shadow, observing the way the sun traced patterns across the floor, each shift highlighting the care and consideration with which she approached every aspect of her environment. She reflected on the interactions she had shared with Robert, noticing how he lingered at the edges of conversation, attentive yet cautious, and she understood that her calm observation and gentle guidance were influencing the household in ways that were invisible yet unmistakable. As Mary prepared the living room for the anticipated gathering later in the day, aligning documents and arranging decorative items with precision, she considered every potential reaction, every unspoken word that might arise, ensuring that her presence alone communicated authority, wisdom, and insight. The afternoon sun began to cast warmer light through the windows, emphasizing the textures of furniture and fabrics, and Mary, sipping her tea, allowed herself to envision the conversations and subtle confrontations that would unfold, each step carefully measured and executed to maintain her composure while uncovering the truth. Her thoughts traveled to the family history, recalling quiet moments of tension and the small, deliberate decisions that had defined relationships over the years, all of which informed the strategy she now silently executed. When Robert returned home from his errands, he sensed the shift, the quiet intensity that Mary exuded, and he understood without words that her careful orchestration of space, attention, and timing was setting the tone for the events to come. As the day wore on, Mary continued her meticulous review of documents and observations, each adjustment, each glance, each small movement reinforcing her position and ensuring that when the moment arrived, she would be prepared to navigate the complexities of family dynamics with grace, patience, and insight, maintaining her dignity while subtly guiding the household toward clarity and resolution. Her eyes occasionally flicking toward the envelope as a reminder of the discovery that had initiated this carefully measured day and the ripple of influence she intended to sustain as the unfolding story continued. Mary moved through the sunlit living room with quiet deliberation, the soft golden light emphasizing the neat arrangement of cushions and the polished wooden floors, every step deliberate, every gesture measured, as she positioned the documents she had gathered earlier on the coffee table. She poured herself a second cup of chamomile tea, the steam curling upward, and took a slow sip, letting the warmth settle as her mind reviewed the observations she had made of Karen over the past weeks, recalling subtle gestures, fleeting expressions, and small inconsistencies that had hinted at the hidden maneuvers within the household. Across town, Karen worked at her office, meticulously organizing her schedule and financial records, unaware that Mary's careful surveillance and strategic thinking had already begun influencing the undercurrents of family dynamics, with each decision now being anticipated, calculated, and subtly guided by Mary's foresight. Back in the home, Mary adjusted the placement of a photograph on the mantel, noting the way light fell across it and how shadows played on the nearby furniture, each movement reinforcing a composed authority that required no words, signaling a presence that commanded attention through quiet confidence and careful orchestration of her environment. Robert lingered near the doorway, observing the precise interactions between Mary and the household, sensing the subtle shifts in energy and understanding how the controlled environment allowed Mary to influence behavior and maintain balance with minimal confrontation. Mary opened her journal and began to note observations, creating a detailed account of behavioral patterns, small discrepancies, and potential strategies to manage future interactions, her pen moving steadily across the pages as she reflected on how patience and attentiveness could achieve influence more effectively than overt assertion. The afternoon light deepened, casting elongated shadows and highlighting the textures of upholstery, photographs, and documents, emphasizing the deliberate order Mary had established and the subtle cues she was sending to both Robert and Karen, each one designed to reinforce her presence and control over the household atmosphere. She reviewed her notes once more, considering the timing, the placement of items, and the sequence of interactions, ensuring that every element worked to maintain clarity, respect, and her quietly dominant position within the family dynamic. As Karen returned home for the midday break, Mary observed her approach, noting posture, facial expressions, and subtle shifts in demeanor, understanding that the careful arrangement of space and intentional pacing of interactions created a psychological landscape that guided behavior without overt confrontation. Mary moved to straighten the cushions and align documents once again, each gesture emphasizing precision, composure, and intentionality, reinforcing the notion that she was aware, prepared, and in control, creating a structured environment in which every action and word carried measured significance. Robert watched silently, recognizing the deliberate strategy in Mary's movements, the calm yet commanding way she maintained order and influence, noting how even small adjustments to the room or the placement of documents could communicate authority without a single word being spoken. The day progressed with careful observation, controlled pacing, and strategic interactions, Mary maintaining a presence that subtly but unmistakably guided household dynamics, every detail reinforcing her calm dominance, foresight, and thoughtful orchestration, setting the stage for the conversations, decisions, and subtle confrontations that would define the unfolding events and establish the balance of influence she sought to maintain within the family. Mary glanced around the living room, noting the sunlight shifting across the polished floors and illuminating the subtle imperfections in the cushions and photographs she had meticulously arranged. She sipped her tea slowly, allowing the warmth to ground her thoughts as she reflected on the subtle hints and inconsistencies she had observed from Karen over the past weeks. Each small gesture, each fleeting glance from her daughter-in-law had been cataloged in Mary's mind, forming a detailed map of behaviors and potential motives that she could reference without relying on confrontation. Across town, Karen organized files at her office desk, her posture confident yet unaware that Mary's attentive observations had already begun shaping the household's interactions and the perception of authority within the family. Mary moved deliberately, adjusting a picture frame, realigning documents on the coffee table, and smoothing the fabric of the sofa cushions, her movements slow, purposeful, and controlled, communicating influence through presence, rather than words. Robert lingered in the background, taking in the subtle tension, the careful orchestration of objects, light, and space that Mary employed to maintain calm authority, understanding that her strategic placement and measured gestures set the tone for the household without requiring explicit confrontation. Mary opened her journal, noting observations of small behaviors, inconsistencies in routines, and minute shifts in Karen's expressions, each entry reinforcing her strategy and maintaining a mental record that guided her responses and interactions throughout the day. She poured another cup of tea and considered the timing of each movement and interaction, ensuring that her presence and composure communicated control and insight without overt assertion, allowing the household dynamic to shift subtly in her favor. The afternoon light deepened, casting elongated shadows that highlighted the deliberate arrangement of the room, the careful alignment of photographs and documents, and the gentle balance of order, and calm that Mary maintained. As Karen returned home briefly, Mary observed from her chair by the window, noting the precise adjustments in posture and facial expression, understanding that each movement was an unspoken acknowledgement of Mary's quiet authority. Mary rose to adjust the position of a decorative item, her movements deliberate, and each adjustment reinforced the sense of organization and control, subtly influencing behavior and guiding interactions in a way that felt natural yet subtly directed. Robert watched silently, appreciating the subtle yet undeniable command Mary held over the environment, noting how the rhythm of the household, the pacing of movement, and the alignment of objects all communicated a narrative of strategic foresight and composure. Each gesture, each calculated step reinforced Mary's role as the observer and subtle orchestrator of events, allowing her to maintain control while fostering a sense of calm and order. The quiet sounds of the home, the ticking of the clock, the rustle of papers, the faint hum of the appliances, served as a gentle backdrop to the tension and anticipation, underscoring the importance of careful observation and deliberate action. As the afternoon continued, Mary's calm composure, meticulous attention to detail, and strategic planning ensured that the household operated under a subtle yet unmistakable guidance, maintaining balance, influence, and clarity, shaping the unfolding interactions and preparing for the carefully measured confrontations and discussions that would follow, reinforcing her position while preserving dignity and insight throughout the day. Mary felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere as the afternoon progressed, the sunlight waning and casting long, warm shadows across the living room, illuminating the meticulous arrangement of furniture, photographs, and documents she had curated with care. She moved quietly from the window to the coffee table, adjusting the alignment of papers, her eyes keenly observing Karen as she entered the room, carrying a tray with a cup of coffee, her steps measured yet slightly hesitant under the unspoken tension that Mary's presence exuded. Each movement of Karen was catalogued in Mary's mind, small expressions and micro-gestures that hinted at her awareness of Mary's keen observation, allowing Mary to silently assess intentions and subtle shifts in demeanor. Robert remained at a respectful distance, noting the careful choreography unfolding before him, understanding that Mary's calm authority and strategic presence influenced not only the physical arrangement of the room, but also the behavior and responses of everyone within it. Mary adjusted the blinds, letting sunlight fall at an angle that accentuated the clean lines and orderly structure she maintained, every small detail contributing to a controlled environment that allowed her to navigate the complexities of household dynamics with quiet composure. She sipped her tea, savoring the warmth and aroma, and considered the careful sequencing of interactions that would occur, the conversations that would unfold, and the manner in which she could maintain influence without overt confrontation, allowing each individual to reveal their intentions through subtle cues and actions. As Karen placed the coffee on the table, her hand slightly trembling, Mary observed without comment, her eyes reflecting a mixture of insight and patience, recording each nuance of expression and movement, recognizing that the power of presence often outweighed verbal assertion. The afternoon air was still, the faint hum of the refrigerator and the gentle ticking of a wall clock providing a subtle rhythm as Mary's mind methodically worked through the scenarios she might encounter, anticipating responses and planning her actions to ensure clarity, respect, and effective management of family interactions. Mary moved to straighten a decorative vase, aligning it precisely with the edge of the table, her gestures deliberate and controlled, demonstrating that even in the smallest acts there was authority, and that every action contributed to the reinforcement of her composed and attentive leadership. Robert observed the interaction, noting how Mary's presence shaped the environment, and how Karen's awareness of observation subtly altered her behavior, reinforcing the balance of influence without the need for confrontation. Mary opened a drawer to review additional documents, each page carefully examined for inconsistencies and hidden implications, her mind connecting the pieces of information she had gathered, creating a comprehensive understanding of the household dynamics and the intricate relationships that defined it. Every gesture, glance, and adjustment in the room reinforced the narrative of calm authority, careful observation, and strategic foresight, demonstrating that influence could be wielded quietly and effectively, shaping interactions and outcomes in a way that maintained dignity, respect, and control throughout the unfolding afternoon. As the day continued, Mary's composed movements, meticulous attention to detail, and strategic planning ensured that each interaction was measured, each response considered, and each behavior understood, creating a controlled environment in which clarity, influence, and subtle guidance directed the household while maintaining the appearance of effortless composure, setting the stage for forthcoming revelations and measured responses that would continue to define the family's interactions. And balance of power. Mary moved through the quiet house with deliberate steps, each movement measured and intentional, as the late afternoon sun cast warm light through the windows, highlighting the polished wooden floors and carefully arranged furniture, emphasizing the order she maintained throughout the home. She paused by the mantel to adjust a family photograph, her hands steady and precise, a subtle demonstration of the attention to detail that defined her approach to the household, ensuring that every object, every piece of paper, and every decorative element communicated calm authority and thoughtful care. In the kitchen, the faint aroma of chamomile tea lingered, blending with the soft hum of appliances, creating an atmosphere of quiet domestic rhythm that contrasted with the underlying tension Mary sensed from Karen's earlier interactions. Mary took a slow sip of her tea, letting the warmth settle her thoughts as she reflected on the patterns she had observed in her daughter-in-law's behavior, noting subtle inconsistencies and fleeting expressions that revealed hidden intentions without the need for confrontation, allowing her to maintain both awareness and composure. Across the house, Karen arranged documents at her desk, occasionally glancing toward the living room, unaware that Mary's strategic positioning and careful observation had already established a quiet influence over the flow of household activities, guiding interactions and shaping behavior in subtle yet effective ways. Robert, observing from the doorway, recognized the interplay of timing, space, and deliberate gestures that Mary employed, understanding that each adjustment to the room, each shift in light or placement of an object, carried meaning and authority, silently communicating expectations and boundaries without a single word being spoken. Mary moved to straighten the cushions on the sofa, noting the way sunlight highlighted textures and created natural lines across the surfaces, reinforcing the visual narrative of order, composure, and thoughtful presence that guided the household's dynamic with an almost imperceptible authority. She opened a drawer to review the notes she had meticulously kept on past interactions, referencing subtle shifts in expressions, body language, and choices made by Karen that indicated underlying strategies and priorities, allowing Mary to anticipate potential reactions and plan measured responses while maintaining a calm, composed demeanor. As the afternoon progressed, the lights softened, casting elongated shadows across the room, and Mary continued to position herself strategically, moving with quiet confidence and attention to detail, ensuring that every gesture, glance, and adjustment reinforced her influence, while preserving dignity and subtle control. Robert observed the unfolding interactions, appreciating the depth of Mary's awareness and the precision of her subtle interventions, noting how she maintained a sense of order and clarity while allowing others to act freely, shaping outcomes through quiet observation and careful guidance. The household continued to operate under this structured rhythm, Mary's presence a stabilizing and guiding force, her strategic actions and attention to detail ensuring that clarity, respect, and subtle influence were maintained throughout the late afternoon, preparing for the unfolding conversations, discoveries, and interactions that would continue to define the balance of authority and understanding within the family as the day moved toward evening, each measured step reinforcing the careful orchestration and thoughtful composure that characterized Mary's approach. Mary walked through the softly lit living room, her movements deliberate, each step and gesture reinforcing her presence without a word, as the golden late afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, casting gentle patterns on the polished wooden floors and highlighting the carefully arranged furniture and decorations. She paused by the mantel, adjusting the alignment of family photographs and small ornaments, her eyes scanning the room with quiet attentiveness, noting how shadows shifted across the surfaces and how subtle changes in lighting altered the perception of the space, enhancing her sense of control and awareness. Across the house, Karen continued her work at the office desk, sorting documents, her mind focused on tasks yet occasionally drifting to thoughts of the home environment she navigated daily. Unaware that Mary's careful observations and subtle orchestration had already established an underlying influence, guiding behaviors and interactions in a calm, measured manner. Robert, standing in the background, watched with quiet appreciation as Mary moved with poise, her presence commanding respect through composure and meticulous attention to detail, demonstrating that authority can be maintained without verbal assertion and that influence often flows through the careful management of environment and subtle gestures. Mary moved to the window, drawing the curtains slightly to adjust the incoming light, noting the way it played across textures and surfaces, casting refined patterns that complemented the deliberate placement of objects throughout the room. She returned to the coffee table, reviewing her notes and documents, cataloging minor shifts in Karen's expressions and interactions, each observation reinforcing Mary's understanding of the household dynamic and guiding her choices for future interactions to maintain harmony, influence, and clarity. The air in the home was still, with the faint ticking of the clock and the gentle hum of background sounds providing a rhythmic backdrop as Mary methodically aligned objects and reassessed positions, her movements reflecting the subtle command of a well-ordered mind and thoughtful strategy. Each small action, from adjusting a cushion to repositioning a decorative vase, carried meaning and reinforced her subtle influence, creating an environment where composure, attentiveness, and foresight directed the flow of interactions, guiding household members' behavior and shaping outcomes without overt confrontation. Robert observed silently, noting the delicate balance of energy in the room, how Mary's presence orchestrated the household's rhythm, influencing decisions and responses through attentive observation and strategic placement, and recognizing that every minor adjustment reinforced her authority and insight. Mary poured herself a fresh cup of tea, savoring the warmth and aroma, using the brief pause to reflect on patterns she had observed and potential scenarios that could unfold in the evening, ensuring that her presence and actions continued to guide interactions while maintaining a sense of calm, order, and subtle power. The late afternoon light gradually softened, accentuating the depth and texture of the room, the alignment of documents, furniture, and decorative objects all contributing to the narrative of quiet authority and thoughtful leadership that Mary maintained. As Karen moved briefly within her line of sight, Mary observed with careful attention to posture, glance, and pacing, reinforcing through nonverbal cues the expectations and structure she had subtly instilled throughout the household, maintaining composure while guiding behavior and ensuring clarity and balance in each interaction. Every movement, glance, and adjustment Mary made reinforced the overarching structure of the household, creating a carefully orchestrated rhythm of order, foresight, and composure that influenced interactions without direct confrontation, allowing the household to operate smoothly under her subtle guidance while preparing for the conversations, decisions, and reflective moments that would continue to unfold as the day progressed. Mary walked slowly through the quiet house, her steps measured, as the fading sunlight cast long, soft shadows across the polished wooden floors and highlighted the careful placement of furniture and personal items, reinforcing the sense of order and calm she cultivated. She paused by the living room window, adjusting a decorative item just slightly, observing how the light and shadow played across surfaces, emphasizing the depth and texture of the room and reinforcing her subtle influence over the environment. Karen was nearby, organizing papers at her desk, occasionally glancing toward Mary with a mixture of respect and curiosity, unaware that Mary's attentive observation had already guided the flow of interaction without any direct instruction. Robert lingered silently, appreciating the nuanced control Mary maintained over both the physical environment and the emotional tone of the household, recognizing that her composed presence directed behavior and responses in a gentle yet effective manner. Mary moved to straighten the cushions on the sofa, each motion deliberate, reflecting her careful attention to detail and subtle guidance of the household dynamic. ensuring that every element contributed to a sense of stability, calm, and order that permeated the space. She opened a small journal to review notes on subtle behaviors, micro-expressions, and gestures she had observed, cataloging these details to anticipate potential interactions and maintain a composed, insightful presence. As she returned the journal to the shelf, she sipped a warm cup of tea, enjoying the aroma and the quiet sense of control it provided, reinforcing her thoughtful, patient approach to influencing the household environment. The afternoon light softened further, falling at an angle that accentuated the polished surfaces and the precise alignment of photographs, documents, and decorations, all contributing to the visual narrative of subtle authority and composed guidance. Mary's eyes followed Karen briefly as she moved through the office, noting small adjustments in posture, slight hesitations, and careful actions that reflected the influence of Mary's attentive and measured presence, allowing interactions to unfold naturally while maintaining a clear understanding of the household dynamic. Every gesture, glance, and movement reinforced the narrative of subtle oversight and calm control, guiding outcomes without the need for confrontation and creating a sense of balance and clarity throughout the home. Robert continued to observe, noting how the timing of Mary's movements, the placement of objects, and the careful orchestration of light and shadow all contributed to the atmosphere of calm influence, demonstrating that authority can be maintained effectively through presence, awareness, and thoughtful action. Mary adjusted a vase on the mantel, ensuring alignment with the edge of the table and symmetry within the room, each small action reinforcing her position as a stabilizing and guiding force, influencing interactions and setting the tone for the day's unfolding events. The quiet background of ticking clocks, soft rustling papers, and the subtle hum of appliances provided a gentle rhythm that complemented Mary's movements, reinforcing the sense of order, composure, and careful observation that defined the household dynamic. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden hues through the windows, Mary's strategic positioning, attention to detail, and composed awareness ensured that she maintained subtle control and insight, shaping interactions and responses while allowing the natural flow of daily life to continue, preparing for the nuanced conversations and reflective moments that would follow into the evening. Each action and observation carefully contributing to the ongoing balance, clarity, and subtle influence that characterized her approach to managing the household. Mary moved through the softly lit hallways, each step precise and considered, as the late afternoon sun cast intricate shadows across the polished floors, emphasizing the deliberate order she maintained throughout the home. She paused by the staircase, adjusting a framed photograph slightly, ensuring alignment with the surrounding decor, her actions subtle yet purposeful, reinforcing a sense of calm authority and quiet observation that defined her presence. Karen continued her work at the office desk, occasionally glancing toward Mary with a mixture of curiosity and deference, unaware of how closely her movements and expressions had been noted and cataloged, each subtle shift reinforcing Mary's strategic understanding of the household dynamic. Robert lingered in the background, quietly appreciating the subtle choreography of influence Mary maintained, observing how her gentle adjustments, patient timing, and mindful awareness shaped the rhythm and tone of interactions without the need for direct direction. Mary walked to the living room, straightening cushions and repositioning small decorative items, her movements deliberate, each action contributing to a broader sense of balance, order, and clarity in the space, creating an atmosphere where influence and respect were maintained effortlessly. She opened a journal to review notes on past interactions, cataloging expressions, gestures, and minor behavioral shifts with meticulous care, using these observations to anticipate potential outcomes and maintain composure while subtly guiding the household dynamic. As she returned the journal to its place, she sipped a warm cup of tea, enjoying the quiet moment while reflecting on patterns she had observed, planning her next strategic movements with a measured, thoughtful approach that reinforced her subtle authority. The sunlight softened further, creating a warm glow that enhanced textures, colors, and the carefully curated placement of objects, reinforcing the narrative of order and quiet oversight that Mary had cultivated throughout the day. She observed Karen moving across the room, noting posture, glances, and pace, understanding how her subtle presence and careful positioning influence behavior and interactions, allowing the household to operate smoothly under her guidance. Each minor adjustment, whether a shifted photograph, a straightened cushion, or a rearranged object, carried meaning, reinforcing Mary's thoughtful control while maintaining a natural, unforced rhythm in the home. Robert watched attentively, recognizing how Mary's awareness of light, space, and human behavior created a seamless, subtle orchestration that influenced the tone and flow of daily life without overt assertion, demonstrating the power of composed observation. Mary poured a fresh cup of tea, reflecting on the unfolding day, considering the next steps and potential interactions, ensuring that her presence continued to guide and shape outcomes with grace, foresight, and strategic subtlety. The soft ticking of clocks and faint hum of appliances provided a gentle cadence as Mary moved through the rooms, each action reinforcing composure, attentiveness, and the understated influence she exerted, creating an environment where clarity, stability, and quiet guidance defined the rhythm of the household. As the sun dipped lower, the interplay of light and shadow accentuated her careful arrangements, the alignment of objects, and the deliberate placement of every detail, reinforcing a narrative of steady, subtle authority that influenced interactions, set expectations, and guided behavior while preserving calm, balance, and thoughtful oversight as the day transitioned toward evening. Each movement, glance, and adjustment contributing to the ongoing harmony and control that characterized Mary's approach. As the evening light filtered through the tall windows, Mary moved gracefully through the familiar spaces of the home, each motion deliberate and measured, maintaining the calm yet attentive presence that had defined her throughout the day. She paused to adjust the angle of a photo frame on the mantel, ensuring alignment with other carefully curated objects, a subtle act that reinforced her steady influence over the environment without drawing attention. Karen, seated at her desk in the adjacent room, continued her tasks, occasionally glancing toward Mary with a sense of curiosity and subtle apprehension, unaware of the depth of observation Mary maintained, noting each posture, glance, and movement with quiet acuity. Robert lingered in the background, appreciating the subtle orchestration of behavior and environment Mary had cultivated, recognizing that her careful timing and mindful adjustments guided interactions with a delicate balance of authority and empathy. Mary poured a fresh cup of tea, the gentle steam rising in the soft glow of evening, taking a moment to reflect on the day's unfolding events and the nuanced behaviors she had observed, cataloging them mentally for the coming days. The interplay of shadows across the polished floors and walls created a visual rhythm that echoed the measured pace of Mary's movements, reinforcing the sense of order, clarity, and calm influence that permeated the household. She moved to the sofa, adjusting cushions and small decorative items with meticulous care, each action reinforcing the subtle, guiding presence she exerted over the daily life of the home, ensuring that interactions unfolded smoothly and thoughtfully. Karen continued her work, her gestures and expressions unconsciously adapting to the environment Mary had curated, reflecting a silent acknowledgement of the subtle authority and insight Mary held. Robert watched quietly, noting how the careful orchestration of objects, light, and human behavior allowed Mary to influence outcomes without overt instruction, demonstrating a mastery of subtle guidance and composed oversight. Mary settled into a chair with her journal, reviewing notes and reflections on the day, anticipating interactions, and planning thoughtful adjustments for upcoming moments, ensuring that the household remained balanced, harmonious, and under her steady guidance. The evening light shifted to a warmer hue, emphasizing textures, objects, and arrangements throughout the rooms, each detail contributing to the ongoing narrative of composed presence, subtle influence, and mindful control. Each movement, glance, and adjustment reinforced the atmosphere of calm order, demonstrating that attentive awareness and careful orchestration could shape behavior and maintain harmony effectively. The quiet rhythm of the home, the gentle ticking of clocks, soft hum of appliances, and distant city sounds complemented Mary's steady, deliberate presence, reinforcing the sense of calm vigilance and poised oversight. As she rose to walk toward the window, Observing the fading light and the arrangement of objects, the household remained aligned, harmonious, and responsive, reflecting the enduring influence of Mary's composed guidance and careful attention to detail, establishing a sense of continuity, subtle authority, and calm resilience that would carry into the coming evening and beyond, shaping the environment, interactions, and outcomes with quiet mastery and thoughtful awareness.